Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and gives this video a thumbs up. Zoe McGrady awarded Brian her rose during the first rose ceremony on the season 10 premiere of Bachelor in Paradise, but are they still together after the show? During the premiere, Zoe and Brian hit it off and had a nice conversation while playing ping pong. Furthermore, she stated that she could see herself with him at the end of the program, but she was also interested in Dale Moss, who had taken Kat Izzo on a date. During Bachelor in Paradise Season 10, Zoe continued to spend time with Brian, including a romantic dinner on the beach where they looked at the stars together. Following that, Zoe stated in her confessional that Brian was the only guy she'd want to pursue. They had their first kiss on day 2. Zoe then gave Brian her rose during the first rose ceremony, but will they leave Paradise as a couple? Zoe, 28, finished third in Grant's Bachelor season. She received a hometown date despite never having been on a one-on-one date with him, and then moved on to the fantasy suite dates, after which he said farewell to her. Zoe was characterized as a villain throughout the season, particularly on the first one-on-one date, when she repeatedly took Grant away from the other ladies. Brian, 34, was eliminated in week 2 of Jen's Bachelorette season, but he made a notable debut on premiere night when he grabbed Jeremy Simon's car keys and then Jen herself from him. Jeremy arrived in a red sports vehicle, but Brian snatched the keys and informed him that he wanted to spend time with Jen. Jeremy did not want to fight in front of the leading lady, so he bowed out graciously. According to reality. Following Season 10 of Bachelor in Paradise, Steve, Zoe, and Brian are no longer together. In reality, their romance terminated in week 2 of the show. Parisa came before the next rose ceremony began. She was Zoe's fellow contender on Grant's season. Parisa invited Brian on a date, and he agreed. This resulted in a love triangle involving Zoe, Brian, and Parisa, with the tension spilling over into the second rose ceremony. Brian offered his rose to Parisa instead of Zoe at the rose ceremony, which resulted in Zoe being removed from the program because she did not receive a rose from anybody else. Reality Steve also said that after Brian and Parisa left the show, they were still dating but not engaged. They exchanged roses at each of the remaining rose ceremonies. Zoe and Brian struck it off during the first week of Bachelor in Paradise Season 10, but their relationship was not meant to be. It's bad that Zoe had to leave the show so early, but Brian made it further than he did during Jen's season. Hopefully, Zoe will find the love she is looking for soon, and Brian and Parisa's relationship will remain forever. When Zoe McGrady descended the steps onto the warm Costa Rican beach for the Season 10 premiere of Bachelor in Paradise, she was brimming with a quiet determination. The sand beneath her heels didn't shake her stride, and the signature drink in her hand, a spicy margarita with a salted rim, served more as a prop than a necessity. At 28, she had endured one of the most polarizing arcs in Bachelor history, finishing third on Grant Ellis's season without ever receiving a solo date until hometowns. Though she earned the fantasy suite invitation, Grant sent her home the following morning, with the rose ceremony looming. The heartbreak stung, but what lingered more painfully were the headlines branding her the villain for repeatedly pulling Grant aside, brushing past other women's boundaries like they were sheer curtains in her way. She hadn't come to Paradise for redemption. At least, that's what she told herself as she adjusted her sunglasses and offered a nod to the producers. She came for love. Or maybe to prove to herself, and Bachelor Nation, that the villain label didn't define her. Either way, she wasn't here to play safe. Brian Otts, meanwhile, had something to prove too. The 34-year-old investment manager from San Diego had left little impression on Jen Tran's Bachelorette season, exiting in week 2. But his arrival had been unforgettable. He'd swiped the keys to Jeremy Simon's red sports car and walked straight up to Jen with a cool smile and no apologies. His confidence bordered on arrogance, but it wasn't malicious, it was calculated. Jeremy had chosen to bow out that night, unwilling to create drama in front of Jen, and Brian capitalized on that. When Brian first arrived in paradise, his shirt was unbuttoned halfway down, tan lines peeking out beneath the fabric, hair slicked back with just enough effort to appear effortless. He had a ping-pong paddle in hand and challenged the first person he saw, Zoe. It was the first moment of sincerity between them, and the crack in his confident exterior didn't go unnoticed. They sat by the ping-pong table for an hour afterward, the sunset painting shadows on their faces. Zoe talked about her dog, her failed engagement in college, and how she'd felt misunderstood on Grant's season. Brian admitted he didn't think he made it far with Jen because he was all bark and no substance at the time. It was rare vulnerability, the kind that paradise rarely delivers so early. And when Zoe leaned back on the bench and looked at him, really looked at him, she saw possibility. Their first kiss came on day 2. It wasn't flashy or forced. They were sitting on a blanket at the edge of the beach after a candlelit dinner arranged by production, watching the stars. Zoe was talking about constellations, something about Orion's belt and how her dad used to take her to planetariums. Brian leaned in quietly. Their lips met softly, then again, with growing confidence. In her confessional afterward, Zoe said, "It's crazy, but I could see myself with him at the end of this. Like, maybe this could actually work." When the first rose ceremony arrived, Zoe didn't hesitate. She gave her rose to Brian, her voice steady, her eyes searching his for assurance. Cheers erupted from the other couples, and the two hugged, whispering something indecipherable to the mics. They seemed solid, at least for now. The morning after the rose ceremony, a new arrival shook the beach, Parisa Mehta. She was radiant in a sea green bikini, her dark curls catching the sun like flames. Zoe tensed immediately. Parisa was a familiar face, a fellow contestant from Grant's season. Though they had never directly clashed, Zoe had always sensed an unspoken competition between them, two women with strong personalities and bold romantic strategies. Parisa was eloquent, worldly, and unbothered in a way that irked Zoe, though she admired her, too. What unfolded next was the kind of day-date paradise producers dream of. Brian and Parisa rode horses along the cliffside, dismounted for a picnic under the palms, and shared stories about travel, culture, and family. Their chemistry was palpable. Even without the slow-motion edits and background music, their spark was real. When they returned to the beach later that evening, Parisa kissed Brian goodbye on the cheek. Zoe was watching from a distance. The second rose ceremony approached, and Zoe grew more isolated. She tried chatting with other men, Chris from Charity's season, Malik from Rachel's season, but no one sparked anything close to what she'd felt with Brian. On the night of the rose ceremony, Zoe sat alone on the daybed as Jesse gathered everyone for the cocktail party. She wore a navy silk dress and hoop earrings, hoping to channel strength even if her heart was spiraling. She approached Brian one last time. Thanks for watching. If you likes this video, do not forget to subscribe to my channel and do not miss any update.